All right. Yes. There I am. Hello, everyone. How you guys doing? Good? Did you guys have fun last night? You guys still feeling it a little bit today? No sudden movements? Keep it chill. We'll just switch to my screen when you guys get a second. Perfect. All right, fantastic. And this is actually our newest app is what I'm going to cover, but we're going to talk about real-world designing and prototyping. Something you didn't think that you needed, but after seeing this, you'll be like, yeah, I need that, which is awesome, right? Because right now we have, we have Creative Cloud, we have various apps that we use, and again, we can throw Sketch in here, but, you have Illustrator for, vector designing and illustrating. You have Photoshop for compositing, Lightroom for also, editing photos. You have Muse for creating a website, say, without writing any code, which is awesome. Okay, so when I talk about real-world designing and prototyping, I could actually use Muse. If you guys aren't aware of it, again, it does just that. Allows you to create a website without writing any code, which sounds blasphemous. Like, wait a minute, you have to write code to make a website. But hey, it is what it is. Dreamweaver will do both, so allow you to, give you that visual interface as well as the coding aspect as well. I'm excited about Dreamweaver because we're like revamping how the coding is done, and it's going to be more along the lines with brackets, just as an FYI. That's a little insider info coming in a little bit, so that's definitely pretty cool. But if you're doing any sort of any design and prototyping, whether it's for a website or a mobile app, you're using lots of different tools to get this done. And they can be limiting in ways, and anytime we're using multiple tools, we have that conversion issue, and do I have to remake stuff? How is that going? And also, we want to just be able to get our ideas across as fast as possible. Let me design something, at least even if they're just a bunch of gray boxes, let me get that done and put it in front of somebody as fast as possible, and let's make mistakes early. That's the goal. But what you do is you end up cobbling together various tools, again, whether it's Photoshop, Illustrator. So again, this might be what you have on your desktop. It's like having Illustrator with all these artboards, showing these various layouts. That's kind of where you could be at if you're making a mobile app. And then let's not forget about all the different sort of sizes that you have to deal with, right? So again, you might start off in Photoshop, start with pretty graphics. Sure, why not? And then start to lay out the various screens using Illustrator or Photoshop. And then you'll have all these little tools that you guys might use to sort of get an idea across. Lorem Ipsum is a classic example, dummy text, right? I like Hipster Ipsum. If you haven't been there, it's so awesome, right? And then there's Samuel L. Jackson Ipsum. There's all sorts of them out there. Super funny. That one's a little more vulgar, the Samuel L. Jackson. A lot of F-bombs in that one, but nonetheless, it's like a little cottage industry of prototyping, adding text. And then you need images. So all you guys have maybe on your desktop images that you use, you need that profile pic. So it's that one friend that ends up in all the profiles for your apps is that one person, And whether you're pulling that from Facebook or wherever, and whether they realize it or not, we don't know. But you have all those assets on your desktop, and you use it to create a composition or, a layout or design quickly, right? It's this little cottage industry, and you're just kind of piecing things together. And then you can dive into prototyping, right? You have the design done, and again, you can use, say, Framer.js as one example that we'll use internally, at Adobe. So again, a lot of JavaScript, and, and it is robust, but it is, it's going to be throwaway code at the end of the day. But kind of gets the idea across, but that's separate, say, from Photoshop and Illustrator, right? Or even InVision, which is awesome, but the idea of, jumping into another app and having to redo stuff is no fun, right? So, and we would use these internally, by the way. So if I take a look at, we used to have multiple mobile apps, but now we have, say, Adobe Capture. So that's what we've done for many of our apps, using Capture just to show you real fast. I could show you internal assets of the building of this app using Photoshop, using Illustrator, right? All those various sort of cobbled together, basically, Because the idea is, like, if we're making this new app, we want to make sure we get this experience in front of people as quickly as possible. And again, just start making those, see what works, see what doesn't work, right? And then hopefully what ends up in the sort of the final app. So again, I don't know if you guys are aware of this. This is free. You could download it today. I just vectorized that text, right, and makes it even look even better. But essentially, we had to roll like 3 or 4 different apps into one app, right? But all these transitions and all these different screens, how do we lay that content out, not only on the phone, but on the iPad and, across these different screens? How does this work, right? And again, we've done it the same way, using Illustrator, Photoshop, and prototyping apps as well. And then you're like, okay, well, like, you think I think I know what everybody wants, and I don't know what everybody wants. I'm like, no, this is how it should be done, right? Like layers. Where's a layers panel? Like, we need a layers panel here in this app or whatever, But in general, like, it's good to know that there are other designers out there and other users out there. And we've spent a ton of time getting to know all of these people. So we seriously, and the product teams travel around a lot. I think this is a shot from a Germany user group talking to user interface designers about what they'd like in an app and like sort of what doesn't exist yet that you would like to actually have. And we might have preconceived notions, right? But we approach this typically from just a very open book, meeting with companies. This is at Airbnb, talking to these big companies that, their livelihood's based on it. It's like, well, how can we make your job easier? Because we're in the business of making your job easier at the end of the day. So we invite them internally, and we're like, hey, let's start. This is one of the first things we did. Had a Slack channel, basically, for communicating with designers and UI UX designers to kind of get their feedback and everything. So you can tell this is really old because this is Sparkler. So that's what it was actually initially called, this app that I'm going to talk to you guys about, Adobe XD. But it was originally called Project Sparkler. So you might be able to find some things online about that. And so this is like from 2 years ago. This is kind of a road we kind of started down. And I think there's some really good ideas here, guys, for like designing and prototyping. Again, we don't want to just create another Illustrator. We want to go beyond that and think about, okay, well, what are some of the common tasks that we run into when we're designing an application? So doing the user interface creation, simple things like taking a rectangle and, let's kind of bow out any one of those sides. Like, is there such a thing as an arc tool to make this easier, to make it an interesting shape, whether it's, an icon or whatever the case may be. Typically, it'd be an icon in this case. You can see that, just a sort of record button or whatever. Rotating and repeating content, again, huge. This is what user interface is all about, taking simple shapes, but making it easy to make simple shapes and even make them more complex and give you that control. So again, rotate and repeat, right? It's like step and repeat in Illustrator, like taken to the next level. And again, these are just ideas that we are working on. Right? So here's our gear icon using rotate and repeat, and at any time, if you change one of those, it changes all of those. You can see how valuable this is, right? I'm like, that is really cool, and this is still an idea that we're knocking around internally that hopefully we will see. Mirror snapping. So watch, just drawing on one side, you can start to see that line that says, hey, I'm in the exact middle. Oh, you hit the exact middle. How often do you have to do that? How often do you have to take a box and duplicate it just to get, that's what I use squares for measuring sometimes. Like here's a box, here's a box, they're the same size, therefore, no, why can't we have guides that do a lot of that work? Repeat grid, which actually did make it into Adobe XD, which you'll see in a second. But the whole idea of repeating tasks, like do we need to, can we make it easy for people to create a repeated grid, right? And you'll spend all day. What do? You put on your headphones. You're just like, I'm just going to listen to some music because I got to make 6 to 8 to 12 to 14 of these, right? And here it's done quite simply. So yeah, repeat repeat grid is huge. Distribution, again, simple things. It's like, why don't we have this now? Once you see it, well, yeah, let's just stretch that out. Without stretching the shape, let's just reposition them, right? Easy things concerning sort of designing and prototyping. As we get into prototyping or storyboarding, linking these screens together, again, no need to jump into another app, but link them together with different transitions. You know, I obviously see that path. I know exactly where it goes. I could send it to someone else, right? Or I could look at it on my phone. And, you know, this is where we want to go with this as well. So having that live preview, all in one app, you know. And once we've seen it on our phone, we can send it to, again, this is, by the way, this is like sort of NDA stuff that we're working on, by the way. So just, we're aware of the fact that, you know, when you publish a prototype, we need to get feedback, so you can obviously see there's comments on the side that gets tied to the app. But this is the sort of thing that I want to see. I want to be able to suck those comments right into my actual designing app that I'm working on too, so I don't even have to switch between both. But again, that's kind of the start of Sparkler, like a bunch of ideas that we've had sort of based on, you know, our own work and talking with others in creating sort of a new tool, kind of not letting Illustrator or Photoshop like hinder us in any way, because we know that there's, you know, there's step and repeat, things like that. You know, I can blend objects together in Illustrator, but taking a lot of those concepts to the next level. So then we released Project Comet. So that's why you guys might have heard of this, right? This was our designing and prototyping app. We announced it at Max, right? Said, hey, this is going to be awesome. This is coming soon. And yeah, it was kind of a big tease. So what's up with that? It's messed up. Then we get questions about when are you going to give it to us? And we get that for the next couple months. So it's a fine line of like showing things early but not too early, because even what you see in Adobe Experience Design CC, again, this is a preview, so it's the very beginning. We want to put this in your hands like right away. And you guys can download this, install it, work with it, you know, for free. All you need is an Adobe ID, right? And we launched this, last month. And it has a lot of those things that we talked about. You have UI drawing, okay, and it looks simple, but it's actually more complex than it looks. You know, creating, importing, drawing, using UI kits, you know, going from there, creating those layouts, using the repeat grid to, you know, duplicate items easily for making this layout across multiple screens. And then even as you go across multiple screens, tying those screens together, you know, with transitions and everything. So this is what we want, right? At the end of the day, I want to design, I want to prototype, I want to learn, I want to see what works and see what doesn't. And then even from there, you want to be able to share it with others. So that's the next step. So I'm actually just going to like jump right into this. You know, kind of show the getting started, some of the UI kits, creating and importing, repeat grid, prototyping content, publishing it out, and then integrating some real data. I'll kind of show you where things are going that we're working on, and we'll see how those builds work on my machine too, okay? So it might not be perfect. All right. So just so you guys know, if you have Creative Cloud and you launch it, you should see additional apps. This is where it's listed. So if you've already installed Photoshop, you have it right down there. I already have it installed, so it's right here. Adobe Experience Design CC. We can click Open. Just works like everything else. Here it is. And, you know, we can start with a new design. So obviously we have these different versions, pretty straightforward, recent files. I can click this little arrow next to iPhone 6, and then I get sort of advanced, additional mobile phone options, or dimensions, basically, is what it is, right? And then you have UI kits and resources. So typically what you'll do is you'll start with, say, iPhone 6. You'll jump in there, and now you're ready to rock. Okay, I did want to point out really fast, get started with a sample file. So if I select this is a fully baked sample file that has all these various steps in here, right? This is your course in Adobe XD. So you hardly need me here. Thanks, guys. No, just kidding. But yeah, this is really cool. Just kind of click me through it, let me mess with it, and then like get on with the rest of my life, right? check this out. I love this, and this kind of goes unnoticed sometimes, but UI kits, right? So yes, I could jump in here and start creating, and I will in a second, but I have UI kits for, say, iOS, Google Material, Windows. So here's all this stuff, guys. Look. Let's take a look at, this is pretty simple. Let's take a look at this one. And you can see it's actually made up using all of these various tools. And this is pretty simple, but this is all that stuff that I didn't have to make. Okay, so let's get that curve just right for iOS. And if you wouldn't want to mess with the system, if you will, but you can obviously have sort of full control over that. So I can easily jump in here, grab any one of these items that I want, drop it into, like this is a good case, drop it right into sort of my version. You know, copying that, even these pieces right there, you know, pasting it in, and I'm ready to go. So it makes you look good because you can get up and running quickly, but I'm just going to start with iPhone 6. Really straightforward here, guys, just kind of starting out. I can jump in and let's just pick a different color. First thing people notice, by the way, as you start creating, I'll just like create a, you know, a rectangle. You'll start manipulating this, and I even got this question yesterday. It's like, what's up with this like system color picker? Colored pencils, really? Really? Yeah. This is just the system one. This is, we're going to replace this. So this is high on the to-do list, by the way, is create our own custom picker. Because a lot of times you're going to want to jump in and say maybe play with the hex color, or who knows what. But you have that right in there, and that's what you'd end up with. So again, pretty straightforward as you start creating with different elements. And again, I'll just do this really fast just so we get a couple things on the screen here. It works as expected. Right, let's grab this. Do a little line. So something like that. Pretty basic. Get rid of that, yeah. You're welcome. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I went to art school. Look at that. That is so nice. Grouping this. So good. No, that's not that great. Well, actually, one thing that bothers me about this, by the way, is how there's this hard edge. I'd actually want to round that corner. So again, yes, I can do some drawing and some creation with these tools. Essentially going to want to jump into Illustrator for all of the power that it has when it comes to drawing. But this does the basics of what I need. Even if I want to jump in here, again, round the corners, do things like that. I have that sort of control. Even when it comes to the pen tool, it seems very unassuming, right? It's like I got this pen tool. Not impressed. You know, I want to make some mountains for this design. And I can, you know, add these different Bezier curves, stuff like that. Let's just do this. And in Illustrator, you'll have the add point tool, subtract point, the Bezier tool, like all that stuff. And you quite frankly don't really need it because even with this, actually I don't even have the pen tool selected. With this line selected, I could add points anywhere I want. So there's no need for another tool. So we can impress you by loading up that toolbar more, but it's just not needed, right? I want a point there, I can add a point there, right? I want to make it a Bezier point, I double click on it, right? So no need for another tool, and I can start to make this look, you know, a little better, hopefully, right? But that's what I do in this case, sort of manipulating this, not switching to another tool. Even if I wanted to remove any of these points, it's just selecting it and deleting it. It's not that complex, right? So again, just don't assume the lack of tools means a lack of technology kind of going on behind them. For this, let's give it a nice fill. And I don't know, something like that. I'm trying to make mountains. You get the idea. Because this is for my app that I'm working on, which is about the wonders of the world. Text is exactly as you'd expect. It is there. Let's just change the color. Get some content in here like that. Okay, cool. In general, I want to resize this. I don't get all these points all the way around it. I can actually let's just recenter this right here. I can just grab this bottom and then scale it up. And then there's this text. I can select this text and change it. Any font, on my desktop, it's exactly what you'd expect, guys. It's pretty straightforward. We know how that works. It's not crazy robust, by the way, because as I start to look, even when I select this text here, I get some options over here. It's not like crazy robust. Like I can't do sort of sub-selection. I can't make this O a different font, for instance, right? So again, this is sort of not even version 1.0 yet when it comes to text. So a lot of times I'll just want to take text from another app and still paste it in, or take graphics still from Illustrator and then like paste it in, right? Because that's what I'd want to do in this case. Take some graphics, say, from Illustrator. And you can even take an SVG. I haven't done this yet, and I don't have one open in the browser, but I guess I'm able to copy an SVG and paste it in as well. So an actual SVG, so copying these graphics, coming in here, let's get rid of this boring text, pasting this in right here, right? And this is what I'd want to do in this case, and just kind of stretch that out. And the nice thing is that all this data, if I ungroup it, I have all that data like already editable. It's all that math and everything, because obviously like this building needs to be straight. The designer doesn't know what he's doing. So we could fix things like that, but I have full control over all those various points as I dive into it. So, and again, just double clicking, it's exactly as I'd expect. If I want to like kind of connect that might be something I do like that. All right, so let's work on this. I'm not liking those mountains there. Let's take this. And let's make this white. Something like that. That's what I'm going for. So that works. Again, just copied, pasted from Illustrator. I should be able to do that with an SVG in the browser if I cared to do that as well, which is fine. Even going beyond that, I can create some more things. I don't know if you guys are aware, in terms of like even, and this is just a shout out to Illustrator, by the way. Shaper tool, by the way. I need to make one more icon real fast, right? Shaper tool, bam. I need to make like a map pin, I need a circle. So again, the shaper tool allows me to draw a circle. I think I suck at drawing circles. I'm actually pretty good at drawing circles, right? Or a triangle, you get the idea. Your rectangle, oh, I'm actually pretty good at stuff, right? And it's all your tool. And why did I even switch to that other tool? I don't need to switch to any other tool. I'm using the same tool to do all these things. And that's kind of the concept of XD. We don't need a zillion tools. Maybe we just have the tools we work smarter. Like in this case, again, just kind of repositioning that. I'm noticing in this case, I want to get rid of this line. I can just scribble over that line and then get rid of it like that. But it's off, right? So we notice it's off. I still have the underlying data. As I click into it, I can grab that and kind of manipulate it and change it any way I want in this case. So I still might not get it perfect, but that's okay. Yeah, that's not good. Anyway, so there it is. I could paste it in. Let's not dwell on the details, guys. Really, let's just make that really small. Maybe you won't notice. There we go. It still needs work. All right, so easy enough to create, again, using any other vector app that you want, quite frankly. Bring that content in. Even when it comes to images, I can drop in images really easily, as expected, right? This isn't rocket science. But even taking any image that I want to drop in. Now, if I just drop in an image, it's just going to, be that specific image and constrained, to that image size, okay? But typically what I would do is, draw out a square. So let's just draw out the square for this background. And send it to the back. And then we'll fill that square with that image. So I'll drop that in, and then it takes up that whole size. So now when I, adjust it, you can see how it reacts, right? It's going to fill it completely, and this more sort of meets my needs, right? So that's what I do, sort of drop in images. I might want to duplicate this screen as well, because I want to add some more as I start to design this out. I can use this artboard tool right down here, select it. I can draw out that artboard, or I can even select from a number of the, pre-formatted sizes over here. So again, iPhone 6, I could add that just like that. I could even take this, if I click and hold down the Alt key and Shift key, I can just duplicate it. In fact, if I just do a copy-paste, I've duplicated that screen. So now I can have, the second screen, which is going to have a lot of that particular data on it. In this case, I want to create something that, is going to be more like a list. So we want to have an image. We want to have some text next to it. Decrease the size, something like that. Let's make sure it's white. And this is what you'd do. You'd put on your headphones and you're like, okay, here's this piece, and you'll do copy, paste, and move, right? So that's what you do as you start to build out this layout. Because we're going to have the, wonders of the ancient world, modern world, natural world, all that stuff. These are different categories. And, if you decide you want to change this from, a rectangle to more of a rounded rectangle, I have to do that for each one, which, again, this is just laborious. I don't have to do that. And again, as you saw in the video earlier, if I just delete those, I'll just select these two items. In fact, let's get a background in there too. Let's get a nice something like that kind of shows it as a container. And this is a big request. Is the request for layers, because right now I'm moving things forward and back. But that's one option that we're looking at as well. But once I have all those items selected, I now want to make this a repeat grid. I can just click repeat grid right over here, right? Done. And then I scale that out. You can see that it's obviously repeated all those, right? It gets more interesting though too, because check this out. I can say, hey, you know what? Let's grab an image, just this featured image right here. I could drop that right in there, right? And it will propagate across all of them, right? But I don't want the same image across all of those different versions. I can select, let's select like 18 of them, right? And drop those in. And it's going to change like all 18. And again, there's as many of these as I want, by the way. If I take a look, I could expand this out and you can see sort of all those different images, right? But this is the way I want to work. It's like, okay, well, this layout kind of sucks, right? There's way too much space here. Well, I can start to adjust it. I can adjust the padding, if you will, so the rows and the columns. I can decrease the size of these items too, and do all those adjustments that I want to get this to look good. And notice how it's kind of dealing, kind of like with a class system or a sort of having a root symbol, more or less, because it knows I want the style to be all uniform, right? I want the style to be uniform, but I want the data to be different for each one, right? So the data being the images. So I can jump in here and say, and this is what you do. You do the wonders of the world. We do the wonders of the natural world down here. And this is what would happen. You would do that. You're like, oh, this doesn't fit. So I know I need to adjust my design. This is something you wouldn't run into until you actually publish out the app with real data. That's when you realize, oh no, those names are too long. So am I sort of compensating for the worst case scenario here? So and again, I can make those adjustments any way I want. Maybe extend this out, something like that. You guys get the idea. As I start to tweak this. Okay, something like that. So that works right now, just again, for the sake of time. Going beyond that, if I decide I want to have a version that is, say for instance, for like an iPad, right? And let's make it horizontal, right? Because that's our next scenario. It's like, okay, well, let's take this content. I want this to be for the iPad now. I could extend out that image like I showed you earlier. Everything fits in there just fine. But this also works vertically, or as I go horizontally, you can see all of that content. So for this particular case, we know we have more real estate. We can have some more fun with it. Like, what if we want these images to be bigger? Let's make them bigger. Let's make sure this text is always going to be in the center for this iPad. I should I'm centering the text. I want it to make sure it stands out so I can add a shadow, right? So dropping in a shadow, that's a little darker. And you can see, really quickly how fast you can go, say, even from this one list to, 3 lists and on and on and on. Cool? Pretty easy. Do you guys want it to be harder? I don't want it to be harder. I'm like, yes, this saved me so much time. Oh, I actually need to adjust this. It's actually showing me that actually the photo's out there a little further. But again, so I can make those adjustments. The point is I can make those adjustments kind of on a more of a global scale rather than individually, because this would take me all day. And I could be like, now with XD, I could be like, hey boss, look what I did in well, no, I wouldn't tell him that. I would take half the day off. Then I'd come back later and be like, oh yeah, I did all that work for you. Here it is, right? So that's what you'd potentially want to do. Again, repeat grid, huge. We can go on and on with this, even to the point of this app. After I've created all those screens, I want to link them together. And let me just switch to another project and just kind of, we can take a look at performance, by the way. And this is huge, because right now I would consider those 3 PSD files. But if you could imagine having 300. Look at all these various files. They're not crazy complex, but they're not simple either. Look at all of these repeat grid lists. Look at the performance as I start to zoom in and out. I can bounce around this all day long if I want to. So I do. I even have a bigger file than this one, but I have the sort of the mobile phone version. That's this sort of column, if you will. Then I have the iPad version or the tablet version, and then into sort of the desktop version. And I don't know how many are here, but if you've ever tried to open up this many files, PSD files, just don't do it. It's a bad idea. Don't do it. If you did that, you did it on accident, right? Guaranteed. You're like, oh, I accidentally selected all the files to open. Right? Don't do that. But look at the performance in general, right? So I can zoom in on the, this designed app. This looks much better. Kind of see what I was going for earlier. And it's fun. At this point, I can start linking this together. So it doesn't require another app. I can select prototype. Okay, so I went from design to prototype. Again, no need for another app to do this. I could switch to prototype. This is my home page, right? This is the starting page, so that's why I've ticked that flag there, which is on by default. But I can say, hey, make this the start image or start page. But in general, this is my prototype. And look what happens when I start to select things. This Explore button is really going to kick off all the fun. So I could select that Explore button. You could see how it changes. It says, hey, I got a little tag here, which means I could do something. It gives me a little squiggly line too. So I can just drag that over, point to this screen, right? It connects it. And then we can say, hey, it's going to link to the iPhone menu. It's going to slide left, and it's going to have the ease out, right, over the course of 0.2 seconds, right? We want to go back. I wouldn't advise this. I don't know why I made this button so small, but you can link that back as well. Same concept. We don't want it to slide left. We want to slide right. And now I've linked those 2 screens together. Let's go beyond that, because even for this object, right? So selecting it, where do I want that to go? Right down here. Let's point to this screen right there. And we'll have that slide left too, right? And just so you guys can get a preview of sort of the different transitions or segues, I think they use the word segue because it fit in that spot just right. That's why they use that word instead of transition. Segue is shorter, fits better. All right, perfect. So nonetheless, that's what I do. I'm saving this file. Again, this is like saving 100 PSDs or however many I have. I want to see this in action. I can click the play button right over here or preview, and I can start to dive into this. So I can click explore. It works as expected, right? I can go back. You guys get the idea. This is not complex. It works the way I've expected it to, and more of this is hooked up as well, right? So this is cool. in general, I can even go from there. Like, and this is what I'll do. You'll start prototyping. You'll look at it. You're like, like I don't like that text, or that word is wrong, or whatever, right? So that's the case. Is you'll see that you like missed something or whatever. Well, you can go in and still change that content, whether it's a typo or whether it's the color. I'll just change the color, for instance, to like a green so it matches that scene. But I've changed that live prototype now. It's, again, much better. I don't have to close out of it and go back in. This is something you'd overlook if you weren't with me today, quite honestly. So that's what I do. Just jump in, make those changes, whether it's text. And again, a lot of this text I just pasted in. And, continue to work that way for this particular app, right? And so that's what I do. I'd prototype it. I'd see those different transitions and, get a feel for this app, right? And I think it's legit. I think it's looking pretty good. I probably want to share this with someone else at this point, right? There's a couple different ways I could do that. Let me actually show you this because you could probably see that button already. But if you're building like a really robust app and you're sharing it with someone and you're like, go into this menu and go down here and look at this screen that's 3 levels down or whatever, right? And like, this is something specific. Well, what you could do instead is just hit the record button, and now we're recording a video of the interactions. So now the end user or whoever you send it to can see sort of the flow as we dive into these. It's recording all of these various movements. So you can navigate clear down to a screen if you want to. They're like, oh, right there, oh, that workflow, that works just fine in this case, right? Hit stop. It does what you think it's going to do. And again, I can share that with whoever I want. So that's a recording, right? We actually need to get this in other people's hands. That's this button right over here, right? It wouldn't be any use to anyone else if I could drop on icons if I want to, right? Here's my prototype. All I'm going to do is hit create link. It's going to create that link, and it's, has to upload it and all that stuff. So it just kind of depends on the network connection. And anyone who has this link can access this prototype right here, okay? And if I connected my phone, by the way, if I looked at this on my phone with that link, it's going to fill the screen. It doesn't have any of this like Chrome, if you will. So it fits in there perfectly, which is nice, because at the end of the day, I want to interact with this on my phone, right? But again, it works as expected. I can go through, click through all this content, and, it's going to work as expected. So, and again, we'll get questions on, because they need to provide me feedback, so what's the next step there? I'm sure we're going to have that someday, guys. We already have it in Creative Cloud files, if you guys know or don't know. Did you guys know this? So I imagine it working something like this. Here's a design. Let's view this, view file activity. So this is a file in Creative Cloud Files. It happens to be a PSD. Could be anything, but here we already have the technology to add comments. So add comment. Awesome, right? Leading question. It's awesome, right? Yeah, it's awesome. This is what I do with my work. Just comment on it. Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you. And from there. So anyways, for what it's worth, it kind of keeps that archive. And in general, just so you guys know, there's versioning in here, by the way. I can roll back to a previous version of a PSD, right? I've changed it. If they're like, yeah, this new one's great, but I like the old one, you're like, okay, great. But I could actually click to previous version and it will roll it back. So anyways, so that's what we're looking at. Again, sort of next steps with this. You can obviously see how that works. Let's kind of take this to the next level, guys. There's more things I need to talk about. I only have a couple minutes. But all pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at data still some more. And I'm not 100% sure if this is going to... Saving all this work I just did here. Let's just take a look at this really fast. This is sort of next level stuff that we're working on, and let me just relaunch this. Because what I had to do with my app is I had to type in. I still have to type in every single. If it's a repeat grid, I have to type in wonders of the world, natural world, this, that. Or what about if it's a series of names? Bob, Jane, Peter, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like mind-numbing, right? Well, we still want to be able to use data in those cases for those common sort of use cases like we have here, right? It's like, oh, I got to go in and I got to make up a city. Let's put in a city there. Hopefully it's a real city, right? But maybe Atlantis, and somebody's name right in here, right? That's what you do. Well, we're working on integrating data and ultimately real data, because in this case, for the name, I just have that selected, and I can select name, and then it's going to populate that with names, right? So this is what I want. Again, repeat grid, done and done. Data, what looks like real data, done, right? Same thing for the cities, selecting this. There's your cities, and I can hit this a couple times and just kind of see how this looks. You can see there's one in there that's actually a little long that would break my design. I think it said Colorado Springs. That got cut off. Colorado Springs. So this is a case, again, using this semi-real data, I know this is going to be an issue, and I can adjust my design accordingly. This might not work, guys. I'm just going to be honest with you. But at least you can kind of see where it's going, because I have this web option right here. And if I select this text here, but having basically a spreadsheet of your own data, being able to select that item and hit this column and populate it, right? And it worked. Never mind, I spoke too soon. That did not work earlier. It's usually the reverse that happens, right? It works prior to your actual, but it's populated with this data. So if I decide I want to have the German version, you can see how that works easily for my specific data. Even going beyond that, this is just a browser, so Behance. I don't know if this is an older browser, but in essence, I showed you that screenshot of Facebook, right? So I might steal some people's pictures, right, to maybe populate right in here. Okay, but what if you could actually go to, say, Facebook.com or anything on the web and actually hook in that data? As long as it's a repeating grid, as long as the divs are repeating, whether it's Behance examples or people's names or people's images, I just select them and I drop them in. It works the exact same way. I'm sorry I can't show that to you right now, but actually being able to use other data out there, just with their permission, of course. You get everybody's permission when you do that, right? I do. I don't. All right, so I think we're getting down to the wire, actually, guys. I'm going to kind of continue on. Again, this is XD. I went through all of this, and again, integrating real data is the next step. You guys probably have a ton of questions. It doesn't really replace anything else. It was complementary to the Photoshop work I did, the Illustrator work I did. As part of Creative Cloud, you saw that working. All you need is an Adobe ID, guys. It's not going to expire or time out or self-destruct at any point in the future. It is for Mac only. We're working on the Windows version and in English only, but we wanted to get it in as many people's hands as possible to make this happen. Okay, next step, we are going to have sort of a companion iOS app. Of course, it's going to be on Windows, like I said, and Android as well. So if you can imagine a companion app that hooks in with XD, is like, yeah, of course, that should happen. Let's get that going on. Super, super cool. And then, as far as everybody else is concerned, and this is actually in the app, but as you guys have plenty of questions, if I go in here, let's go to the actual XD. I can go up here, I can go to feedback site, right? So this is our user voice site, because you guys are wondering, what is this coming? Is that coming? We have 550 feature requests, and we can take a look at, say, the top. Let's look at the top feature request. Scrollable area. Can we get that integrated? Enhanced functionality for this prototyping, because right now we're just doing screen transitions, right? Ruler and grid guide, but that's all right here. You guys can vote up, down, whatever, sideways, no, but you can add your own sort of feature requests and bug requests there. This is the best way to get feedback back in our hands, because we want to hear from you guys since this is just launching. And yeah, guys, so thank you so much for your time. I'll be hanging out if you guys